Somebody's been following me there. I'm still here. I can hear the echo. As we saw last week, Ivan, perhaps take down this on sound. We are getting a feedback. As we saw last week, man-made death is terrible. But many of us survived by the skin of our teeth. I survived because I was young. Young people can really take a lot of beating. The man-made death is still here with us today, all over the world. As people, we are regressing. We are not advancing. Disregard the internet and cyberspace. We are going back. We no longer kill for the king, for fun, politics, or freedom. We are really regressing. We're killing for God. We are killing for a religion right now. New York Times recently listed 32 military conflicts in the world today. Everybody's killing non-believers. In Pakistan, India, Chechnya, Ireland, Turkestan, Algeria, Iran, Iraq, Mexico, Kosovo, on, in Africa, in Asia, and in both Americas, in the United States too. There must be hundreds of pogroms going on right now against gays, Jews, against blacks, against whites. And most of this killing is done in the name of God. Everybody's doing it. I saw a bumper sticker once, "Kill for Christ." Kill Hindi, Jews, Arabs, Muslims, kill Presbyterians, Christians, Catholics, vegetarians, whites, and blacks. Just keep killing them. You will find your own God to justify your killing. Criminal religious activities going on every day now. Rape, torture, pillage, and burning. Flesh burning. It's happening right now in many parts of the world. And all for the glory of somebody's God. If you can't kill them fast, starve them to death. That's good. Do it always in the name of Allah, Christ, or what else. Crusades, holy wars, jihads, ethnic cleansing. What the hell is going on? If you don't have your own God, you just invent a new one and kill for it. I don't want to dwell on death anymore. I want to celebrate life. Life with its glorious sides, and even when we have troubles and tribulations, life is much more beautiful than death. Life is a boundless, endless experience of joy. I want to celebrate that. The people you saw last week had no chance. You, everyone in the class, you are a privileged generation, perhaps a chosen generation. Don't let your lives go to waste. You grew up in a world not knowing what I want is. Because whatever you wanted, you had. I don't know if that is good or bad. It's a fact. When I was your age, I carried all my possessions in one suitcase. My diaries, my writings, and few books of poetry. I didn't have clothing in that suitcase. The only clothing I had was on my back. Years later, I find out that Mahatma Gandhi didn't have any possessions but what he could carry from town to town, his white robe and the spinning wheel. I think that's all one needs. Today I'm a father, I have a son. When my son was 12, 15 years old, I could not enter his room. The room was so full of gadgets and toys, like a warehouse. And everything was running on batteries, D, double A, C, D, double Ds, transformers, converters, switches, extensions. My battery bill exceeded my monthly electrical bill. You grew up more or less like that, too. What you wanted, you had. It is a reckless abundance of things you had. The toys you received for Christmas or birthday or any other holiday could have fed a small village in a third world country for a month, perhaps. Now you are far away from these toys. You're away from your room where you grew up. Those toys are collecting the dust of time now. You won't be playing with them anymore. Time is changing. You are at a junction in your life. You are about to make a decision that will change your life forever, I hope. Some of your decisions will change lives for other people too. That is another reality. we have to accept. And I know that you are anxious to change the world. So you will have to do it. Saint Tula, the patron saint of the Bard Film Department, tells me that Goethe, the German poet, said, I quote in translation, anyone who lived to the age of 20 and didn't want to change the world, that one has not yet lived. But be aware of what you can or cannot change. That's where the wisdom comes in, to know what can or cannot be changed. For example, you cannot change food at the commons here. So don't waste time complaining about it. Eat, forget it. It cannot be changed. I've been here at Bard longer than you, and I know it hasn't changed yet. So don't do stupid things and try to change the food. Don't do it. But there are things that you can change. Today, there is not 1,000, not 10,000, not 100,000. I would venture to say that there must be at least 10 million people in the world, mostly children, who are hungry at this very moment. Opening a newspaper on Sunday, classified ads in New York Times Magazine soliciting funds for abandoned children in Brazil, Africa, Asia, and they have pictures of children with swollen bellies. Ivan, let's see some of these pictures. It takes time to adjust things since we have several machineries to go. Okay, let's stop this. Let's stop the killing fields. Of course, when we see something like this, our instinct is always to turn away. If we don't see them, it's less painful and we feel very happy. So when we are talking about change, these conditions should be changed. If you don't change or try to change, your life will be an extension of misery. Do something so that we don't have to look at these pictures anymore. Rapes and torture and hunger and devastation. What happened in Chechnya in the past weeks. It's a crime against humanity. It is your turn now to make the world better, a better place to live, and believe that this world is a pretty good place to live. But don't tell me that we, the older generation, that we failed, that we are leaving a miserable place that has so many problems, and it is your burden now. No, we, the older generation, we did not fail. Neither you will fail. The job is too big for any one generation to fix it, what has been undone by thousands of years of religious insanity in this world. Religious hatred. All of you will have to try to do better than the last generation, my generation. And you will have to do this for the rest of your life. Every day you should test yourselves to see that you are still on the track. The test is very simple. You have to answer yes or no. There are two questions I would like you to remember. First question is, have I done something today that benefited all? Yes or no? Number two, will my deeds earn me a place in paradise? Yes or no? Let it not be said that members of this Cinemagic class did not make the humanity list, that our grades were below the average every day in the service of humanity. In this way, your life will not have been in vain. When I arrived in the United States, but that's for next week. I'll speak about that this next week. When I arrived in the United States, I'll jump over the details. William Faulkner, the greatest American writer, received Nobel Prize in literature. He was my teacher of English. Whatever I learned of English was by reading Faulkner and Mark Twain, especially Faulkner. His acceptance speech at the Royal Academy in Sweden was 1 page long. Remember, Remember, those were the days of Cold War. The radioactive dust from the 2 atomic bombs dropped in Japan was still falling slowly all over the world. The atomic bombs testing about the ground, underground, in the seas, went for years. United States started, the Russians followed, and was avengerously pursued, testing to create the bigger and more powerful bombs, atomic, hydrogen, whatever. The radioactive dust kept on falling so slowly all over the world in those years after World War II. We didn't know that at the time, that this stuff was falling on us. It was called the national security secret information. Perhaps I'm assuming too much from you. I witnessed World War II, Cold War, McCarthy era. I fought for Cuba's rights. I made a film in Cuba in Fidel's glory. Had the pleasure of knowing John Lennon, Yoko Ono, whom I still know. I made a film with John Lennon at one time. Beloit College in Wisconsin. I never heard of the Beloit College. I just received an email about it. Each fall publishes a list of things that professors should know about the incoming class. And this was done in September of 1999. I know we have few freshmen in this class here. They publish this list, which I'm going to read it in summary, to inform the faculty what they're facing with. See, when we live longer into life, we assume that everybody knows what we know. But it's not true, apparently. This is from that list, that what the freshmen interviewed at Beloit College thought about the world. That there has been only one pope. That they were 8 or 10 years old when Soviet Russia broke up. They don't know what Cold War was. They have never feared a nuclear war. They are too young to remember the space shuttle blowing up. Tiananmen Square massacre means nothing to them. Their lifetime always included AIDS. They have never owned a record player. The expression, "you sound like a broken record," has no meaning to them. They have always had an answering machine. Most have never seen a TV set with only 13 channels, nor have they seen black and white TV. They have always had cable. There has always been VCRs. They cannot fathom not having a remote control. Roller skating has always been meant to them in line. Popcorn has always been cooked in the microwave. They think that we beat the Russians in the Vietnam War. That Michael Jackson has always been white. Kansas, Chicago, Boston, America, and Alabama are places, not musical groups. And there has always been MTV. They don't know what a typewriter is, let alone how to use it. Some of this, I'm sure, fits you. In the years after World War II, our concern, that's the Cold War, our concern about the atomic bomb was extreme. I was in New York City at that time, but this was happening all over the country. People were building atomic shelters. You could buy them in supermarket stores almost. Underground, they were buying supplies to last months and years. And they were stacking with water and canned food. And in New York City at that time, they had air raid drills when the alarm goes on all throughout the whole city. Everybody had to go into shelters. That meant basically into the basement. I thought that would protect. And anybody who disobeyed was arrested and thrown in jail. This was the real stuff. This was happening in 1962, 63, 64. Many people were protesting against this. There were marches. Thousands of people would be gathering in New York City at Town Hall, which is, that's where the mayor is. There's a park around it. And they would refuse to go into shelter. And the police would surround them and grab them, as many as they could, to put in jail. And there were too many of them to be all arrested, so the smart ones, like myself, I would be in the center, and so that by the time they'd always grabbing around the edges people. By the time they reached the center, alarm that lasted for about 10 minutes would be over, and then they cannot arrest you anymore. And so we're going to see some of this thing, and anytime you see this sort of a bearded guy, that's me, and at the very end, I'll zero in on my picture that was in the Daily News in New York. All right, Ivan, are you ready to roll it? It's about 2 minutes. Because we have to shut all these lights. That's me. It's me. I'm in the center. That was the hip generation. We all have beards. Uh, 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 oh yeah, I'll skip things. I'm very happy that these concerns, the atomic bomb concerns, and it's no longer concern for you because of the recent political events, changes. But it may come back. May come back sooner than you think. Now we are dealing no longer with super nations. We are dealing with bandits, anarchists. Also, the political winds do change. I can attest that in my lifetime, I have seen many, many changes. Though Faulkner's speech was addressed specifically to writers, because he won the prize in literature, to writers and poets, but the meaning in his one-page speech was universal. And that's what Faulkner wrote all his life in all his books. And he said that to be universal, you have to be specific. And his speech was very, very specific. And that's the only way we can reach everybody, by being very specific. You who are so very politically correct, I hope you are not, some expressions in his speech should be understood in the time when it was written. So when he says, the man must do, he meant philosophically everybody, not the man, male. No, he meant philosophically everybody. Here's William Faulkner talking to you, the greatest American writer. I'll read. The young man or a woman writing today has forgotten the problems of the heart in conflict with itself, which alone can make good writing, because only that is worth writing about, worth the agony and the sweat. He must learn them again. He must teach himself that the basis of all things is to be afraid. And teaching himself that, forget it forever. Leaving no room in his workshop for anything but the old verities and truths of the heart. The old universal truths, lacking which any story is doomed. Love and honor and pity and pride and compassion and sacrifice. Until he does so, he labors under a curse. He writes not of love, but of lust, of defeats in which nobody loses anything of value, of victories without hope, and worst of all, without pity and compassion. He grieves on no universal bones, leaving no scars. He writes not of the heart, but of the glands. Until he relearns these things, he will write as though he stood among and watched the end of man. I decline to accept the end of man. It is easy enough to say that man is immortal simply because he will endure. That when the last ding-dong of doom has clanged and faded from the last worthless rock hanging tideless in the last red and dying evening, that even then there will still be one more sound, that of his puny, inexhaustible voice still talking. I refuse to accept this. I believe that man will not merely endure, he will prevail. He is immortal not because he alone among creatures has an inexhaustible voice, but because he has a soul, a spirit capable of compassion and sacrifice and endurance. The poet's, the writer's duty, and that of a filmmaker is to write about these things. It is his privilege to help men endure by lifting his heart, by reminding him of the courage and honor and hope and pride and compassion and pity and sacrifice, which has been the glory of his past. The poet's voice need not merely be the record of man. It can be one of the props, the pillars to help him endure and prevail. So spoke William Faulkner. Tonight, excuse me, I'm going to show a feature-length film, short feature, Innocence Unprotected, by Dusan Makavejev, crazy Yugoslav. I think he was a Serb, but he was crazy. He was actually thrown out of Yugoslavia when Tito was there, still communist regime. And you will see from this film what it's all about. I'm happy to say that this film was dedicated to me, and I have the only print in 16 millimeter with colored sequences that he made it just for me. The less I say about it, I think the better it is. Just don't judge it, just watch it, and you'll see how crazy this guy can be. Okay, Iman, get your stuff going there.